Hello, and welcome to the Comms Collective, the podcast that puts communications leaders in the mission-led world right where they belong, centre stage. I'm your host, Vishnu Sontu. I've spent more than 20 years working in communications, from campaigns and crisis comms to leading big brand moments in the charity and public sector. And if there's one thing I know, is that comms professionals are often left behind the scenes, but their work shapes everything. That's why I created this podcast, to bring their voices, stories, and lessons to the front. Every episode, I'll be joined by a communications leader, someone who will share their stories and tell us exactly how comms works. They'll share the highs, the lows, the wish unknowns, and the strategies that keep us going in a world where the budgets are squeezed and expectations are sky high. We'll talk about strategy on a shoestring, inclusive storytelling, internal comms that actually works, and how we can look after ourselves and our teams when the pressure's on. So whether you're leading a comms team, just starting out in the sector, or simply curious about what goes on behind the scenes, you're in the right place. Today I'm thrilled to kick off things with Ann Llanza, Director of Strategic Comms, Knowledge Management and IT. We'll be talking about Ann's career, what makes her great at her job, what she has learned throughout her extensive career, and what's next on her journey. So let's dive in. Welcome, Ann. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Ann has been working in the development sector for over 30 years, with communications being at the core of her competency. In her current role, she leads the knowledge management, IT and strategic comms team at RECOFTC, the Resilient Communities, Sustainable and Equitable Forest Landscape Organisation. Ann's based in Bangkok. Before joining RECOFTC, she was head of comms and senior comms manager at the British Council in the Philippines. I know Ann from our work at the Humanitarian Leadership Academy, where she led the Philippines hub. She's got lots to tell us. I'm really excited. So let's dive in, Ann.
Yes, let's.
Tell me about your career. How did you find your way into comms?
When I was a little girl, I've always wanted to write and travel. Come college, I thought, at that time it was just, I think, journalism that's open for like college courses. There wasn't a lot of other courses available in terms of being able to write and make a living out of writing. So I went into journalism, and my first few jobs were in in media outlets that I was editorial assistant and then eventually a writer for a news magazine. When I got out of the mainstream media, I stumbled into an advertisement for a women's health organization. And they were looking for a communication officer. So I tried my luck. It was perfect because it was as competitive as the mainstream media. They were paying the same, maybe even more, especially for new graduates. I was about 2 years out of college. The most important part is that you get paid for working on issues that are very relevant, especially to me at that time. It was a women's health group. Since then, I've been in development work for the last 30 plus years.
Wow. And it sounds like that really piqued your interest and got you thinking more about not just women's health, but, health and development in general, which is fantastic. And I know, although we didn't mention it in the biography, you've worked at the UN, you've worked at so many different places. What do you think has influenced you to keep working in these areas? What keeps your energy going?
I guess for me, it's the psychic rewards and how it is such an honor to be working in thematic areas that really resonate with me. Working with the communities keep me grounded. So I mentioned women's health. There was also the humanitarian learning with the Humanitarian Leadership Academy. I was also involved in disaster risk reduction and response. Now it's on community forestry. So many different drivers For example, like poverty alleviation, gender equality, women's rights.
I completely agree with you. Knowing you can help people and see that you're making a difference really gets you up every day, even though it can be hard and challenging sometimes. That satisfaction, isn't it? Like you say, that high of thinking, wow, I've helped to make this happen, is why a lot of us stay in that not-for-profit arena. It's fantastic. You've probably led lots of campaigns, but what is one campaign that you've been especially proud of and why?
Well, we have this campaign at the UNFPA where I was working at that time in the south of the Philippines. It was on indigenous peoples, maternal, neonatal, child health and nutrition. I was in charge of the comms part. What was interesting there was that it's more on behavioral change communication. I got to work with the indigenous peoples in 5 provinces. I worked with them in designing the campaign and the materials. I saw them wearing the hats and umbrellas with slogans and call to actions to go to the nearest birthing facility. For me, that was really special. When people ask me about particular campaigns that I'm proud of, that's what that comes to mind. Should I go on with the other one?
Please do.
So that was one. And then the other one was on community theater. I was communication officer of a local women's NGO on violence against women. We helped organize a community theater of the women. I wrote the script and put it on production. It was amazing. After the production, one of the women said that for a while, it was difficult for her to explain to her husband about the advocacy, about the community theater, why she needed to go to another province. But when we were producing it, putting it on stage, she said, "Oh, he's okay now. He's fully supportive." So that kind of change or mindset, I think that's a major achievement. Even if it's just one individual we change, that's really one of the things that keeps us going sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like, as you said, doing like a theatre production doesn't sound like how are you helping on the cause of violence against women and girls, but actually there's a difference and it could be subtle. But for that person, it's made a change in her and her family as well, which is
Yes,
powerful, really powerful.
absolutely.
What has been the toughest challenge that you faced in communications and how did you handle that?
I think particular challenge, and I guess it's the same for most of comms professionals, would be reputational risk.
Mm.
For me, that's the point where I shake, like, oh my God, what is this? When it gets down to reputational risk. But for other aspects of the comms work, it's not really a challenge. You can call it a challenge, but you know how sometimes, because it's development work, you have technical people and then you have the comms people. The comms people would want to retain their technical jargon. As comms people, you're trying to get more reach. We're trying to get more people to understand the messages that we're saying. And I guess it's just that push and pull with technical people that sometimes gets tricky. You face it almost every day. But you get to a compromise. And I guess depending on the audience, and if it's a more technical audience that you're targeting, then it's fine. And then I guess, and as long as you are able to explain to them why you're trying to simplify, and then you have to make them understand that it's not about dumbing down, it's simplifying so more people can understand it.
Absolutely. That with our technical colleagues, they're so passionate about what they do. They're brilliant at what they do. And they're worried that you're going to take away the emphasis. But actually, what we're trying to do is get even more people to understand what they're saying by simplifying it,
Yes.
because not everybody has that same brain of understanding it or the years of technical experience. We're trying to create change, right? We need people to understand it. I know you and I have had many conversations with people about not dumbing down. It's about plain English, plain language. It's about accessibility, isn't it? If you're talking to people in different languages, indigenous people, we have to talk in their language. That's something that'll resonate with them, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere with it.
Yeah, absolutely. In my example earlier, the campaign that we did with the indigenous peoples, it was all in their local language. They were the ones who translated it, because you know how sometimes there's the speaking language and then there's also the more informal language. They did the translations, the posters, the slogans, everything.
Yeah.
It's great.
Moving on and understanding a little bit about the work that you do currently. RECOF is in how many countries? Is it 8?
We're in 7 countries. We're in Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Laos, Nepal, Cambodia, Myanmar.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you work with them? So being director of strategic comms, how do you make that work in each of the countries? I'm really interested in understanding your working style, collaboration, the trials, the tribulations around that.
We have a weekly meeting with all the communication officers. So there we discuss what they need from us. And then, of course, you're always available if they have any questions or other meetings. We also try to come up with a communication plan, just so there is a plan, at least every year. It changes depending on the funding situation, but we try to have a plan. There is definitely a communication strategy, regional. The country offices would have a communication plan, and even the projects would have their own communication plans. And then we meet and talk about it. We try regularly, but definitely the weekly, yes. We try to see if we can meet each other like every year, at least face to face.
That's so important,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes, it creates a certain camaraderie.
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah,
that the
absolutely.
online just doesn't get it.
No.
I mean, they just don't get it online.
Once you get to know people, then online is easier. I remember coming to the Philippines to visit you, and we did a great workshop on communication strategy. Well, I thought it was good.
Great.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, but it's, for me, the important thing there was the relationship building and being able to sort of, now we knew each other, we knew a little bit about personalities, more about each other's families, even, when you're talking in the evenings for dinner and stuff, then you're able, when you're online, to understand that person better, I think. And that's the beauty, isn't it, of meeting in real life.
Yes, especially when you have that personal touch, you would be more connected to them. And then it's easier to know where they're coming from and understand their circumstances.
Absolutely. And part of that kind of leadership role that you have, how's your leadership style evolved throughout your career?
Leadership stuff. I think, well, when I was more junior, right, you would do everything. And get used to that. While I was moving up, say, into more supervisory roles, I was kind of a control freak. I guess now I'm calmer and I am more lenient, and especially when like it's not if it doesn't really if it's sorry when people say it's urgent, especially if they tell the comms team it's urgent. For me, it's how urgent is it? Coming from a disaster risk reduction sector, we have a different urgent. Our urgent is like life threatening, right? But is it really urgent? You get to ask people just so the pressure is not on the team, especially if the pressure has to be on the team and the ball is in our court, definitely. But if it's not, maybe there are ways to talk about it or to compromise. We should have, the planning should have gone on ahead. We should have taken our time to really plan and then execute. But I try not to be a control freak.
You're right about questioning urgency. That's a real challenge in a comms team where people sort of think of you as being a service team, which in some ways we are, but also we're strategic, which is everything you do, and for me, strategic means board level, C-suite level, where we are setting the strategy for comms throughout the organization and how it has to be reflected. So urgent things that come up, somebody's forgotten to tell us about an event they need to promote, or just assume we're sitting there twiddling our thumbs, doing nothing. You're absolutely right to question the urgency of that. And sometimes learning how to say no to things, which is very difficult.
Yes, it's very difficult. I remember saying before to a colleague, it's okay to push back. Because sometimes, we're at the end in the long process of say a project. We're at the end when you're already packaging and ready disseminating. But you're always caught in that, okay, we need to deliver because it has something to do with donor commitments. I really think the way to do it will be to plan ahead. So we are all aligned in terms of what the product is, why we're doing the product, why we're doing the materials and the campaigns. It has to be planned beforehand. The meeting of the minds and the conceptualization has to happen at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something earlier about the kind of working together and the working style for each other. I think there's a real difference also culturally. And I think there's a less of an understanding for kind of like the UK and maybe other colleagues who have colleagues in different countries, but not understanding that sometimes there's a cultural difference. One thing I learned when I was at the Humanitarian Leadership Academy was in every country we were working, we had to understand the rules, almost like the rules of engagement, right? In the Philippines, very hospitable colleagues, probably wouldn't push back as much, probably should. And I learned that actually I had to sort of question it a little bit and say, are you sure you're happy with this? Because it does feel like almost like, oh, London are coming or whatever are coming. And we've just got to do what they say, which is not true. You guys are the experts in your country and what works for you. And I think you and I hopefully got to a stage where I understood that you knew your country better and your communities that you're working with, and therefore you knew the best way of doing the comms around that. And that goes for Kenya, where we've worked as well, completely different style of working. Bangladesh, another one, completely different style. So I guess for you also, in each of the countries you're working with, you're having to understand a bit more about their style of working.
Yes, absolutely. It's also so as we say that we're in some cultures are more passive and they will not say no in the Philippines, especially. It's very hard for people to say no. But I realize sometimes we just have to, and we really appreciate other people understanding, like how you said, other people understanding that it's in our culture to not say no. It's going to be difficult for me around this time. So I guess that's very much appreciated. In terms of working with country offices, that's exactly what we try to do. We try to understand it's okay for them and really realizing that they are the experts in their field. If people are asking for stories, they have the stories. They talk to the communities. They are the ones who are constantly with them, working together with them, rather than people in the regional offices.
Yeah, absolutely. And we rely on people to bring those stories and give them to us, and we have to understand the context they're working in, which is probably very difficult, actually.
I was just thinking sometimes like you're in a call with them and then you hear different noises and you know that they're not in the office. You have to understand their situation. They're probably commuting. They're probably like somewhere in the rural, and then the internet drops and then you know that they're in the rural areas. So it's all those challenges. It takes a certain perspective to realize that it's not it's the environment or it's the circumstances that's making the internet drop. It's not, they don't want it to be like that. It's not their fault.
Yeah, and they're having to work and manage and try and fulfill our demands in very difficult and not easy circumstances.
Yes. And really kudos to the people in the field.
Yeah. I remember with emergencies and responses, working in that humanitarian side where we're saying we need this and we need this, and the journalist always wants that perfect story, and that is not always possible. We're having to make demands, but these people are in a humanitarian situation themselves. When we've dealt with disasters and typhoons, people are losing their
Yes.
homes as well as trying to work
Yes.
and worried about their own families. The reality of that, we
Yeah.
have to remember that.
When people ask you, okay, where's the report? And then you're like, I'm crossing the flood, hang on.
How do you encourage sort of creativity and innovation in your team? How do you do that, and particularly across the different countries that you're working in?
It's more about trying to push them, but with guidance.
Mm.
You try to make them think out of the box. You try to make them visualize other scenarios of what could be possible, whether it's a specific campaign, poster material, communication product, or an approach. I think people are happy and it's a bit more informal. They tend to throw ideas more easily rather than in a very formal scenario. We try to establish a very open working environment.
Probably feel like you're safe as well, and that it's okay to
Yes.
come up with the weirdest ideas, because sometimes you can bring them back slightly and they're really good ideas, you know?
Yes, yes. Encourage it. The crazier, the better.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to the future of comms, obviously you've seen quite a lot over the years. What do you see the changes are for comms over the next 5 to 10 years?
There's definitely AI. So I don't know. I guess for me, authenticity would still be the most sustainable way to do comms. I remember we were in the team discussing it, and then outside of the team, somebody said maybe we can use AI photos. And I was like, definitely, let's not do that. We need to be authentic. Comms people know if something is AI generated in terms of words and in terms of the way the words are crafted. And I think being true to your own voice and being authentic in the communication that you are pushing for, that's going to set you apart from all the AI generated content. And I think the evidence based information would be important because information is so easy to access now. Just Google anything. But if you have real evidence, then you're ready with your armor of proof. People look at you as authentic and they trust you.
Mm.
So they take your message and do the call to action that you want them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Real stories and creating that connection, that emotional connection, is still very important. We won't get that if we don't get real stories.
Human stories, like human voices, the real people that are impacted by the work that you do.
I'm going to throw this question in just because it's timely. It's COP30 at the moment. We'll be putting this out probably when it's just over anyway. As your organisation is about resilient forests, what particularly are you working on that has to do with COP30? Anything you want to tell us about that's important to know?
We have 4 goals, and one of it is on climate change. The second is gender equality and social inclusion, and then we have governance and rights and livelihoods and benefits to the communities. On climate change, we have been very active in COP before, but we're not participating in this year. But we are there in spirit, in a sense that partners have our logos there. There are like position papers that are going to be signed, and we are signing with them. I think specifically on forest fires. So we are really into, so a big thrust of RECOF right now in terms of programmatic approach would be base fire management. So we are doing a lot on that now. I guess what we do sometimes, usually our goal lead for climate would be attending. And then after that, she would publish her think piece, her perspective piece on, but we're not participating this year.
Yeah. But I think it's still, as you say, one of your goals
Yes.
for the organization. I love the fact that you're thinking about inclusion and you're thinking gender as well, and all those things come into play. It's not just about, I guess for non-experts, just about forests and whatever. They're all linked together, don't they? They're all, you think about Indigenous people, their homes and their livelihoods, all are affected by
Yes.
these things as well.
Yes, the approach is holistic so that you don't tackle just one issue. You also tackle the human and social aspects of it. And then even the livelihoods and benefits to the communities, which is more economic. So we're also working on that. And then the rights of the community, their rights to land tenure. So we're also working on that. And then on climate change and how it affects the adaptation mitigation. So how it affects also the different communities that we're working with.
Fantastic, thank you. And just thinking about you and what do you do to switch off from work and recharge yourself for the next week?
I like binge watching on Netflix.
To get out of your head.
Yes. I like to read, write, and do all things fiction. I put that in my bio because at the end of a long week, I would rather just sit and consume. I think of myself as an escapist. That's why I like fiction. I also like alone time. So usually I stay at home and do whatever you can do around the house and just sit with a book or watch TV, movies, Netflix, and yeah, switch off.
Yeah, sometimes it's so hard, isn't it? Because you've been focused for so long in the day that in the evening, I don't want to watch a documentary. I want to just watch something quite light.
Yes, I like comedies, horror.
Oh, I'm not sure about horror. I don't like horror. But comedy is definitely fun. So again, something that you don't have to think about too much is cool. Right. Final question. What piece of advice would you give to your younger self if you were able to?
My younger self. I think I'd tell myself to hang in there. There will always be challenges, and there will be developments that would sometimes be overwhelming, such as, the way it changed from the tech that has changed from fax machines to internet to the whole social media, and now it's really developed. Now it's on AI. You don't necessarily have to run that race of trying to catch up because it will happen and you will be within that. You just need to work with it and make the most of it. Take it as an opportunity, learn it, and then work with it.
Yes, because the technology is constantly changing, isn't it? So you're always learning something new.
Absolutely. And now AI is here. It's never going to leave. First, you think, is it even ethical to use it? I mean, and that's a whole different discussion, the ethics of AI. Yeah. It's like you can use it as a tool, but don't use it to analyze and think for you because it can't.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. Use it as a tool. That's a lot of what I'm hearing from people now. It helps you, it speeds things up a little bit, but you still need to be the person to review it, correct it, make changes that you need to.
Absolutely. Because the perspective and even the voice, it's your voice. So you don't want to lose that. Or it's the voice of your brand, the voice of your organization. You can't just be all the generic things that AI spews out. But it's getting intelligent.
Use it for a few bits and pieces, and it's helpful, especially when you're a lone freelancer. Getting support is great. Thank you, Mayanne. I think we'll leave it. That's it for this episode of the Comms Collective. Thank you to Ann Llanza for sharing her insights and experiences. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to follow the podcast on your favorite app so you'll never miss an episode. It would mean the world to me if you could rate and review the show. It helps more comms professionals like you discover these stories. And of course, join the conversation online. Share this episode on social media and tag us using the Comms Collective. Thank you for listening. I'm Vishnu Sontu, and I look forward to bringing you more honest, inspiring conversations next time.